On this part, you learn how to use migrations to create new tables or to update existing ones. And this is going to be a simple process because it involves just two commands. Now, to better understand this process, let us go to Visual Studio. Now in Visual Studio, to add migrations, we are going to use the data project because this is the project that directly interacts with the database. To add migrations in here, you need to go to Tools, and then you need to go to NuGet Package Manager, and then Package Manager Console. In here from the Projects drop-down, make sure that you select the shortly.data project, and then the command that you need to use is going to be add, then migration, and the name of the migration, which can be any name you want, but since this is going to be our first migration, I'm just going to name it initial. And then I'll press enter, which is going to build the project, and then it's going to create the migration file. But we can see that we get this error in here, which says that the startup project shortly.client doesn't reference the entity framework core.design. Now, the design package is within the tools one, so what this actually means is that in the shortly.client, even though you have referenced the data project, it didn't get a reference of the tools package. Let us go and verify this error. In here, I'll just go to the Solution Explorer, then I'll go to Client, and then Dependencies, then Projects. In the shortly.data, you can see that in fact, we have a reference to Microsoft.Entity Framework Core and also the SQL Server, but we don't have a reference to the tools package. Now to fix this error, what you need to do is that you need to right-click on the data project, then go to Edit Project File. And then in this item group, you can see that we have a package reference to Entity Framework Core, also to the SQL Server. But for the tools, we have two properties. The first one is private assets, and the second one include assets. Now the private assets tag in here within the package reference serves a specific purpose. It controls how the dependencies flow within your project hierarchy. But what exactly does this mean? Now, the value all in here is the most restrictive. It indicates that none of the assets of the specified package, which is the tools in this case, should be treated as dependencies for projects that depend on your current project. So basically, because we have set in here this to all, this dependency will not be passed to the other projects that refer the shortly.data project. Well, why do we need the private assets in the first place? There are two reasons. The first one is that it stops development-specific tools like the Entity Framework Core tools from becoming unnecessary dependencies in the other projects that reference your project. And the second one is that it does simplify your project's dependencies and reduces the potential for version conflicts between different projects in your solution that might use similar tools. So this is why we need it, and it's added by default to this version of .NET. To fix this error, which is the most important one, you can either remove all this part and make it similar to the other ones, or you can just change the value of all in here to none, or you can just comment out this line. I'm just going to change it to none. Save the changes, go here, and then add migration initial. And you can see that the migration file was created successfully. If you want to remove it, you can just use remove migration. And if you have multiple migrations, but you want to remove just a specific one, then in that case, you can use remove migration and then specify the migration name, which is going to remove that migration and all the newer ones. Now let us check this file. In here, you can see that we have the name of the migration, and then it's inheriting from the base class migration. Inside here, we have two methods. The method up in here is a method that gets called whenever you want to apply these changes to the database. And the down method get called whenever you want to remove the migration from the database. Now here you can see that whenever you want to remove this migration, you are basically just dropping the table URLs and also the table users. But when you are applying this migration to the database, you are creating a table users, which has two columns, ID and email, and also another table URLs, which has ID, original link, and all these other properties. And also in here, you have defined the type. So for example, original link is of type string in the model, is going to be of type and varchar in the database. ID is of type integer in the model, is going to be an int in the database table, and it's also an SQL Server identity. It starts with the value 1 and it's going to be incremented by 1. And then here in the constraints, you can see that the primary key for the URLs is going to be the property ID. Now, if I go to the Server Explorer, and in here I just refresh this database, you are going to see that we still don't have any tables, and that's because we have created the migration, but we have not applied the migration to the database. To apply the migration, you need to go to Package Manager console, and then in here, update database, and then press enter. You can see that the command was executed successfully. Let us go to Server Explorer, right click, refresh. And down here you can see that we have two tables. We have the users table, we have the URLs, but we also have the Entity Framework Migrations History, which is the table that Entity Framework uses to keep track of all the migrations, and that's how it knows which migration to apply to the database. In here you can see the migration ID, and in here you also have the product version, which is the version of the Entity Framework Core.